and this is just super vulnerable. As a child, I used to cry myself to sleep sometimes at the thought of losing one of my parents. I think community is necessity. It's the way life has existed and grown and changed and gotten better over all of the years. I think it's curiosity. They ask the best questions and they're not afraid to ask them at any time. That's what I've noticed among the best players.
My intention with starting this podcast was really simple, and it was to get into the minds of successful entrepreneurs, not from a tactical or strategic perspective, but more on how they view things, what their perspective is when they're faced with challenges, when they're faced with the ups and downs of online business, and also what happened in the past to lead them to where they are today. What you'll find is with most of the entrepreneurs that you'll speak with who are successful, they've had to overcome challenges, and it's kind of shaped the way that they ended up here. Now, my next guest is Ryan Bowles. Him and his wife run Profitable Group Academy, where they help coaches scale their business using Facebook groups. Now, when I first met Ryan, maybe a couple of years back now, he was all about community. And to this day, he's still very much community first. And there are three things that, we'll learn from Ryan. Number one is vulnerability. Number two is relatability, and number three is to be really engaging. Attention can be very expensive in today's world, and having the right ingredients in place where you can nurture and take clients through is really, really important. But what I enjoyed the most in this conversation was really the journey that he took to end up in the space in the first place, and the people that he's worked with along the way. He gets pretty open and vulnerable in this conversation, which I really enjoyed, and I just want to thank him for setting up the studio in his place and be able to do this in person. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation, and welcome to the Entrepreneur Unplugged. Because the coaching industry, I think, is so cool. It's very, how do I say it? It's a very close-knit community once you really get into it, right? And I got into it after leaving corporate and kind of stumbled upon it, really, just
that's cool
with a colleague of mine. How did you get into it?
Yeah, definitely not stumbling, I guess. I felt like for me, it was destiny at some point, purely because of the upbringing I had. So I grew up in a household where parents came through the 80s, 90s of like network marketing with just some phenomenal companies, phenomenal people. And so, whether you dabbled in that stuff or not, I saw probably the best side of it, and cassette tapes of Zig Ziglar.
Cassette tapes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jim Rohns and all that, and then the Tony Robbins and all of the books that came with it. And so I saw my parents on stages. I saw them in small groups. I saw them in meeting rooms and all sorts of things, demonstrations. There was car products and stuff, and my parents were always involved with cars.
Yeah, so, you love cars, right?
Yeah. So there's a few blends there, but that's how I came into the coaching space. It was sort of like nurture versus like stumbling across it.
Yeah, right. It was, like I said, you're kind of destined. It was sort of written in for a little while. When you did get into it, like, what was the intention of, like you said, you kind of nurtured into it. Yeah. What was the natural instinct?
Yeah. I guess it didn't happen for a while until it was like, and I don't even know now if I'm considered a coach or a trainer or a teacher. Or, I think there's the nuances there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for like finishing school. I went into all of these different avenues well and truly, like down the track did it come to creating an online program and then selling that program and helping people through it. But if I was to backtrack, it was like, I formed a band and I became a personal trainer. Yeah. And that's, you could call that coaching. It's training. It's working with someone one-on-one. It's working small groups in parks. You've got to sell that service. Yeah. And so, dude, you do, right? Yeah. The company I was with, cutting my teeth as a personal trainer. Yeah. They would make me walk the streets, like the Gold Coast Highway, and enter real estate agencies and enter different businesses and literally learn to engage with someone that you've never met before. And, these days you call it a cold pitch, or online. But we'd have to get past the gatekeeper, the receptionist, and get into the agents.
All in person.
And the owners and inquire about their health and find out, what they're struggling with.
You have to tell me what's the because there's so many different intros, right? And
we tried everything under the sun.
Yeah.
Like, we would just go in there and just drop down and do push-ups. And then, whoever's on the front would get up and look over the desk and be like,
Yeah.
are you guys all right? And we're like, we're all right, because we're confident in like how our bodies and our minds and our performance is. How are you guys? Like, come on, jump down. We've just done 10. You can at least do 5.
Yeah,
and
nice.
we just get them interacting straight away.
See, people should be taking notes, right? Talk about pattern interrupt.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
probably not expecting people to just drop and start doing push-ups, right?
Not walking in and handing out a packet or, come join my thing.
Come and check it out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's pretty funny. Just talking about your background, because I know you mentioned your parents. Now, your dad was 10 years since he passed away.
10 years November, just gone.
In November, just gone.
Yeah.
I know you're really close to him, and you've mentioned in a lot of your posts that he was like your ultimate mentor. Like,
Totally.
what does that mean exactly for you? Because he obviously left a legacy for you to be still mentoring you to this day, right?
Yeah, I think when I think about, and I've written a lot about my relationship with Dad, legacy is like, it took me a while to understand what legacy was, and I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize early on how much legacy he left. And so he taught us how to love, how to care, how to interact with people, how to lead people, how to live not just for himself, but for others. And I think that is what legacy is like wrapped up in. Everyone that came to, his funeral or were involved with his life said that he impacted them in some way. Some people that I'm still in touch with break down in tears because of the impact he made on their life. They're not family, they're nothing like that.
Wow.
And to the point where they'll say he's the best man I've ever met.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's amazing.
And that's not like godlike status. That's just someone that knows who God is and was out working that.
Able to, present that. When did you think, or when did you feel like that, that was the impact? Because sometimes we live in our world, and we live in our world, right? And you don't necessarily see the little things or the detail until, like, sadly someone's gone or after. Did you always know that, or is it something that you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we were on the side of taking things for granted. Like I was very grateful for a loving, tight family that they poured into us. We had the opportunity for family holidays that they would invest in us for sport or what the things were. And so it wasn't like a background that you do hear, from people coming from nothing to something. Yeah. So we were very grateful and always in admiration and honor and respect of that. So it wasn't like as soon as we lost Dad that it's like, oh, I realize what I've lost. It's like, and this is just super vulnerable. As a child, I used to cry myself to sleep sometimes at the thought of losing one of my parents.
Yeah, right.
And then it came true. And so it's kind of a weird thing that I like. That's how much I cared and loved them. So lots of impact.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think you were saying about being grateful, right? I know, and this is, not necessarily like family related or anything, but in the workforce, in just general people that we deal with, there's a lot of sense of entitlement, I will say.
Oh, huge. Dude, we were talking about it just today. Oh, so huge. It's wild. It's really, really wild.
How do you see? Because we see it a lot in, placing teams, salespeople, and, not to name names of any particular person, but everyone has...
Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny. Yeah, Johnny down the road had to get rid of him because he felt so entitled, right? But how is it in your space, in the way your perspective, the entitlement?
Yeah, I sort of like somewhat see I don't know if it's opposite or not, but contentment is like the goal, somewhat. And I don't know if I've fully processed what I'm trying to articulate, but like to be content to me seems like the polar opposite of entitled. Yeah. Where you can be grateful in the little. And, I know millionaires, people that don't even know how much money they got in their bank account, and one of my friends, Liz, was sharing this the other day. She doesn't care what car you pick her up in and do this. Doesn't care because she knows what contentment is like and what really makes life. And so entitlement gets quite funny. It's interesting as like You can see it from like a client perspective, like someone buying into your thing,
Yeah.
and what their entitlement looks like based on their expectations of other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And now they're in your stuff, but that's a different ballpark.
Yeah.
And then you've got your own entitlement when you become a client of someone else. Like, what sort of client are you to somebody else? And you've sort of got to look at both those things to try and find the balance.
On what it is. Yeah, I feel like sometimes there's almost an error in judgment. You know, like that's kind of how some people come across, where, you know, they feel like when they're coming into programs, let's say, they judge not just the program itself, but other people within, you know, the program. And sometimes it gets aired out in social media, which is part of the reason why I'm doing this, is to get off social media, right?
Right.
And I know there's a lot of, even just online, with some of the posting that goes on, and so, a lot of people getting drawn into negative narratives and kind of following down that path. Why I mentioned that is because you've been big on building communities through, I mean, when I first came into the online space, first time I came across you was always about groups, Facebook groups. And it was only, you know, I think fairly recently that it's really taken off, but you'd always been about building community.
Yeah. And that started back when I formed a band, or I joined a band and then formed a band.
Yeah.
And to have a band, it's no fun if there's no one there to interact with, right? So you need to build some form of community. So it started way, way back then.
Yeah.
That's like almost 20 years ago when that sort of circle kicked off. And then you've got to learn, like, you can't just have 100 people at your show or your event or your program or whatever, and then, you know, thank you, see you later, and find another 100 more. Like, you've got to build community within them for them to go the long journey. And so I don't know who said it. Someone can quote it somewhere. You know, the 1,000 true fans idea is that if you have 1,000 people in this huge world that, you know, adore, trust, love the stuff that you're putting out and taking them on that journey, you know, you're set for life essentially. And you don't even need 1,000. You know, when we're starting to talk higher ticket and longer time frames and those sorts of things, your community becomes pretty important.
Yeah. And what do you think about it now, where, again, you know, like a lot of people, attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. It seems like when you are in a community, there's just a common theme, common goal that people go through. Where do you see it, like, in the next 12 months? Where do you see groups sort of going? What's some of the innovation that you think is going to get really popular, maybe oversaturated in some way? Where do you sort of see it going?
Well, I think there's like a, as my friend Myron likes to say, a cultural hypnotic cycle that is just out there. And that's social media's job to keep us hooked to these things. Yeah. I know we were talking about it before, you know, off air, as to our own, like, you know, limitations to it and struggles, but we're aware. But most of the world is unaware, or they hop off it and they don't know why they feel a certain way, or they haven't done the thing that they said they would do. But it's because of the hypnotic cycle that we're in.
Oh, for sure.
And so in terms of where I see groups and such going, I think community is necessity. It's the way life has existed and grown and changed and gotten better over all of the years. How that looks obviously is more on a digital landscape now, but I think it needs to be a blend. Like today, we just met up with a bunch of crew. Some we'd met face to face, some we've never met, but it feels like we have because we've been in communities online, on Zoom, in groups, in Messenger. You meet and the whole thing just clicks and it's like you've known each other forever. But we've been helping each other back and forth. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. And that happens digitally, whether that's a Facebook group, whether that's a third-party app. There's all these other apps out there. I think the format of how it happens is going to chop and change, doesn't matter. As long as there is integrity, trust, those key elements in there. Community, it has to be a key component for anyone to thrive. You can't do it alone.
Can't do it alone, and I think it's super hard to do that as most people come in the coaching game as a solopreneur. They may be hiring one or two people remotely because that's the whole idea of it.
And you even need that community remotely. And so I meet a lot of people in our online space, coaches and such, that don't build relationship with their virtual team.
Yeah.
You know, and they need to be treated like family.
Yes.
Because you can feel like, and if you've got family abroad, how do you treat those family, right?
Yeah.
And like, so you need to also look at your virtual team that way, whether they're, you know, same as you or different to you or whatever. You need to know them. You need to know what they're interested in. You need to ask them about those things.
Yeah.
Not just delegate and give the task. Never going to work.
Yeah, and I think you lose a little bit of, a lot of longevity with it, you know,
Totally.
as we sort of go. What do you think then is the key to like a thriving community? Not just, you know, hey, I've got a community, I've got a bunch of people. Like what's a thriving community where, you know, they check in on you if you're not online or you haven't been posting for a while? Because I know that happens with a strong community. You kind of look out for each other. What's the makeup of it, do you think? Maybe like 2 or 3 things that, you know, you need to have in a community for it to be.
I think vulnerability is incredibly powerful with a community. And so one thing when I gather people together fairly early on, I'll look to see where there's opportunity for vulnerability, because that is one of the quickest ways for me to go, I'm just like you. If I hear your story, I just relate. Or if you hear my story, you're like, I feel that, I get that. Yeah. And that just creates a bond. So within any form of community, online or in person, vulnerability, you need to weave that into the fabric of that community. Yeah. Then I think there's value. So once we've gotten to know each other and understand that, hey, I'm just a dude with the same color blood as you, like then how can I serve you? And you need to adopt that approach yourself. If you're the leader of the community, you need to be able to share value and then invite your members into sharing value back. And sometimes that's heavier to lift at the start and then becomes lighter as people start to pick up on what it takes to make a community. And if there was a third thing, I would say not always about the business. So it can't always just be about the business because we know that life is far more than just that.
It's a lot more than that. Yeah, for sure. And that, like, I love that because I think for most part, you know, if anyone did a content audit, I know I've done it too, right? I would see where, wow, there's no relatability at all. It's like, it's good to put value out there, but too much value, people, you know, they lose a little bit of the sense of what that person's about. And we need that, right? Especially in community. Building a community, you've got those key things. What's the best way to communicate that in terms of, because I know content is a big part of having a good community. What's the best way to communicate that through your content?
Yeah, I think personal story. You know, again, we were talking about story, and story has the power to connect everyone on any level, depending on the story. And so if you're out there creating content, you need to find and document what stories you've got in your world that have meant something to you. Yeah. Something that I picked up from the book Storyworthy, written by Matthew Dix.
Oh,
yeah. Really cool book. He does something called Homework for Life. And my watch just went off a moment ago. I've got it set to a 2:30 p.m. timer that I get a notification that just says Homework for Life. Yeah. And I just document in 3 sentences or less a moment that has moved me in the last 24 hours.
Wow, okay.
And I'm not on that. I don't do that 7 days a week. I'm not that accountable. However, it's a history of stories, some that are perfect to start sharing and to moving the masses with a message. Yeah. Some are just private stories that I might share with my future kids, for example. Yeah. But it gets you in the place of documenting ideas, and then those ideas, sharing those publicly to audience or privately to clients, etc., opens up that level of, if it's a vulnerable story, you're going to find people that come out of the woodworks. Yeah, go,
for sure.
I'm just like him.
Just like that, It almost gives them the permission, right? Yeah, to be able to do that.
Totally. Yeah. So that's probably the way that I would begin connecting with people. Sure. Find and just note down what are the 5 probably toughest moments you've had in your life: personal, business, faith, relationship, whatever they are. And look at a way that you can tell that story with a lesson or an outcome that was different or, than the way that you entered the thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, you don't have to be in a particular niche to be doing that.
Totally.
Because like the people you want to attract, the people much like you and I, right? Or whoever it is to their audience. I think that's an
You will attract the people that you are most like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And either you were the client that you now serve.
Yeah.
You know, and that'll come out.
They're fun to work with. I think because some commonality is always good, right?
Yeah.
But speaking of, I just thought of something, right? And I was going to bring this up with you. Talking about vulnerable, you turned 33.
How did you know that?
You turned 33.
Yeah.
Ryan, I'm prepared.
Done your research.
I've done my research. So I'm going to flash this on the screen. Well, flash is probably a bad, appropriate word. Right. I will say. I think I know.
I know where you're going.
I think you know where I'm going with
this now.
I have to ask. Right. So
I know exactly where we were and what. So
if anyone's looking, well, this will flash up on the screen now. What's going on there? Where was that? 33 years old.
That's my.
I'm gonna get off my phone now, so you can just tell me. You can just tell me about.
That's my backside. Birthday suit. 33. Yeah. There it was. Yeah, we were on Hamilton Island.
Yeah.
It was our wedding anniversary that we're up there hanging out.
Nice.
And we're at this private beach. Beautiful.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
Where we just hiked through like rainforest, tropical.
Yeah.
We were sweating and we went to go for a swim in this just really placid water, but it was covered like in oysters. So we were trying to get out and we thought, this is just ridiculous. But we were so hot, I had to just jump in.
Get in there.
Yeah, get in somewhere. And so Kaylee, my wife, was like, just stay there for a moment and I'll grab this shot.
Yeah.
It was for personal keeping. And she actually then went on.
You don't have to get that vulnerable, right?
No. But she actually suggested about putting it online.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. So all of the critics out there, it was man, deal with it, just deal with it. But for me, it's pretty vulnerable because I've never done that before.
Yeah.
And we had this big dialogue around like, should we, shouldn't we? What's the meaning of this? Why? All of these things. And we think about like, I mean, this will probably open up a huge can of worms. We've had some great discussion around this that opened up.
Yeah.
But we were kind of like, people that are cool with it will be cool with it. People that aren't won't be, and maybe we'll make the right decision. Maybe we won't, and we'll just keep on keeping on after that. So it's kind of a moment of me just putting a flag in the sand, so to speak, to say, hey, this is me. I'm going to give it a crack. It's not my front side. It's just my back side. There's plenty of that on the TV or YouTube or the ads. Way worse than that, to be honest.
That's a good lesson, though. I think it's always, and like you were saying, the story's always good. It's pretty funny. I thought it was funny. I had a laugh.
Yeah, I think 97.37% of people were like cool with it, and then there was a few that were like, "What's this?"
Yeah, I reckon it might have even inspired some people to go, you know what? Like, who really cares, right? At the end of the day, and it's good to hear. And I was saying this at the start. I'm all about like, what's the thought behind it, and that's. Even just the backstory on that, I think is quite cool because I know people wrestle with that all the time.
Right, and I was going to say, no one's talking about it now except you.
Yeah. Now
except you. I didn't know that would come up.
I told you I had a couple of things up my sleeve, but it's cool because you like recently, over the last few months, you guys have been traveling quite a bit. You've been in some cool places. Got stuck out at MotoGP.
Yeah, we got flooded.
Carrying your bags over your heads and going over. Yeah. What's some of the cool things that you've done in the last few months that, because I'll tell you where this is coming from. Burnout, or however you want to call it, people kind of get to a point where they just grind a little bit too hard. And I think we all need to live a bit of a life and kind of to remind ourselves why are we doing this in the first place? Whether it's with family, travel, whatever it is. And I feel like, just following your journey, You've had a few cool adventures, right, in and around.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've done recently that's been cool, and what are you looking to do this year some more?
Yeah, I was going to touch on the burnout piece for a second because the office that we've just moved out of after the last few years, on my back wall, there were 3 words. There was patience, hustle, and gratitude. And way back when I sort of first started getting into this like online and marketing and like social media space. I followed Gary Vee for a while, and he talks about the hustle. And I think it's so important to get something off the ground. You've got to hustle.
You've got to do it, yeah.
But at some point, you've got to start to realize, how does this play out over the long term? Because most of us don't think about the end game when we start. We start and then we stumble. And then we start going, I don't know if I like where this is going. And so we've moved out of that office. I'm glad I don't have hustle on my wall anymore.
I removed that from mine too.
But in terms of the adventure, it kind of lends to that, as like, we want to work. When my dad used to say, you've got to know when it's time to work and when it's time to play. And so I think knowing that for either this period in the day or this period of the month or the quarter or this year, I'm working, and then these are the times that I'm playing. And so, we've been very, fortunate to have a business and a lifestyle that's allowed us to go, look, we're going to go and plan a trip here or do this there, etc. So recently, last year we were in Hamilton Island for our anniversary. And then we took clients with us to Thailand, which was just amazing. It was the first time we'd done anything in-person international with clients. And getting vulnerable again, it was like a big step of faith in that direction, because we're like, would anyone join us? What would we build over there? But it was just incredible. And then we spent a bit longer in Thailand and went and hung out at the MotoGP, or that was before the client period, and then we went up north and we got to hang out and see elephant rescue and swim and wash elephants and feed them and hang out, which was really powerful.
That's cool.
And then to start this year, we also ran another client retreat, which was really awesome as well, and take them through some cool experiences. So this year we've got Hawaii coming up, which is going to be epic. But we and Taki taught me this, one of my mentors, and he taught me this in 2018. Across the table at dinner down in Manly. This was when I was sort of just getting my online course program world off the ground. And he said, cash flow follows calendar. And so if you plan your calendar, your cash flow naturally has to follow it. Whether you need to build business or save money if you're in a job or whatever it looks like. If you get those things booked in, there's nothing you can do apart from make it work.
Make it work, right?
So that's how we've sort of like tried to plan our years out. So we want to do a short cruise this year. We want to go to Hawaii and potentially Tasmania as well.
That's awesome. Tassie's cool. I love Tassie. It's a really cool place. But I think I like that, you have that balance too, because I know people talk about balance. Sometimes you can't get balance, but you have to, exactly what Taki was suggesting. Just on that, actually, now you bring up Taki, he's one of the goats of the coaching industry, right? I know the circles that he's in, and I've worked with a lot of clients, and his was actually the first program that I was in as a closer, as a sales rep. I got lucky enough to be closing for someone who was part of his program. I've seen you do sensei sessions, right?
Sensei sessions,
which like I said, you're presenting to people who they're not necessarily new to the game. They're quite in deep with it. What's it like?
Like 20-year coaches, and like for people listening, if they don't know, we're talking about Taki Moore, his program Black Belt, which is not about karate. And therefore he has sensei sessions. Which are people.
Thanks for the context. Actually.
Which are people that have done something worthwhile to share with others in the community. And so this was last year in November. And he hit me up and said, dude, love to have you as a sensei. You're going up against Ryan Dice, Chris Dufay, and Greg Allen, dudes that are just absolute giants in the space. And there's a bit of banter involved in these sensei sessions. So if you ever get to be on one, people throw a couple of spears, back and forth to pitch to the hundreds of coaches on the call which session they should choose. They can't be in two places at once.
Okay.
And so you've got to win the audience to you. And so I was totally up for that because I don't mind a bit of banter. And we all took you get 5 minutes to pitch, gets people's minds going. And what I did that no one else did was I got all of the crew on the call engaged in the Zoom chat immediately. And I got them working out the cost of inaction based on their Facebook group and the opportunity in there, the opportunity cost.
Yeah.
And there were swear words filling the Zoom chat of people going, you know, F you. Like, why did you make me do the math on that? And so, you know, we had a bunch of fun. I think Chris Dufay, he took the cake in terms of the banter. He came out and said, you know, I don't know why everyone's arguing over second place.
Nice. Good little slide in there.
So kudos to Chris. But it was awesome. Hey, so we had a ton of people come through our session, have a bunch of fun, taught a strategy that we call the Supreme Sales Campaign, which just helps them re-engage and connect with their audience and then present an offer. So we get them to almost prepare their audience for the offer in advance without their audience knowing that they want the thing. And then you know, place that on a silver platter and you know, let the people jump off the screen and onto calls or
actually
into chats.
do it there and then.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Nothing like action and implementation.
No, so it was a pretty cool session, and I think since then, there's been, you know, through 3 crew alone that have reported back to me, there's been over about 250 grand worth of sales
from that.
From that alone.
Just put in context, like I know I was saying before, you know, a lot of these seasoned business owners. What's the sort of range of people that you've got in there as far as revenue is concerned?
Yeah, I would only know for them out of those 3 or out of...
even out of those 3 or in the room, multi 6, 7,
Yeah, you've
8.
got people that go from 10K up to 8 figures.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's, you know, the minority on the higher end, of course, like just anything. But you got people really 30K, 50K, you know, 80K, reaching that $1 million mark.
Yeah.
Stacks of people in those fields.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, the reason I was asking that is because, you know, with the next wave or the next iteration of, you know, your program, let's say, what's the difference between someone doing 10K getting to, let's say, 50K and someone already on 50K getting to 100 and then someone from 100 going to 100 plus in building communities and using groups? What do you feel like? Is there a difference? You know, is there a universal tactic or strategy that works best in there, or the people in different stages, do they need to put it into context for their particular stage?
Well, it's interesting talking about that campaign that we ran. People on varying income levels used it, and their communities on varying levels of connection as well or engagement. So some people openly said, I've neglected having 1,000 people in this community.
Yeah, right.
And they ran the strategy and still brought in sales.
Yeah, okay.
And, you know, they may have only been doing 20K a month or 30K a month.
Yeah.
Then others, smaller groups, only a few hundred, but already doing, you know, $1 million a year, use the strategy, and they filled up their, you know, lead list or pipeline as well. So revenue levels, not so much a problem. I think that building personal brand, which is what we're talking about, becomes incredibly important and like starts to snowball at those levels. But then again, it could be, you know, if you're $1 million coach, you might only have 10 clients. You know,
that's true.
You might not. Most people, I think, attribute maybe $1 million business in the coaching space to hundreds of people.
Yeah.
But it's not always the way. So you might only have 10 people, and community at that level looks very different to having 100 people and needing to build community.
Yeah.
It needs to be very intentional at 10 versus 100. It's a little bit different.
It's a bit different, right?
Bit of a snowball.
What's your advice for people at that, you know, 10K mark, 10K a month, let's say? Because oftentimes they're the ones who, you know, want to get results, implement a bunch of things. They want to get more support, but they're either hamstrung by cash flow or it's just the implementation sort of lacks. What's your advice for them, just in general, if it's not groups or because most of the time they need marketing support, right?
Yeah, I think at 10K it's message to the market.
Yeah.
So you have to get the message refined so that it speaks to your ideal avatar or ideal client, prospect. And when they read your stuff or when they watch your stuff, they say, that's me. Yes. And you start moving them from unaware to problem aware to then solution aware.
Yeah.
It's all about messaging and an offer that's converting. And then it's not about going multi-channel
Yes.
It really
100%.
is about just one channel and going deep on that channel.
Yeah.
To get yourself moving. Our friend Sheila, who just came and shared with our clients this week, she is $1 Million Coach. She's one channel focused because she wanted to prove everybody wrong. That's Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's just very simple tasks. She's got $1 million daily, which is talking about building her audience, clearing out old, unengaged people that aren't interested. And then it's about loving on the leads that she's got.
Yeah.
$1 Million business.
Yeah.
Very
amazing.
simple.
Simple, right?
Yeah. So I think removing distraction, getting the message right,
Yeah.
getting an offer that's converting, and then it's about just how can we put that offer out in front of more people. And so whether that's a workshop or a webinar where you can make one offer to 50 people or 20 people, however many it is, or if it's hand-to-hand combat, the DMs or on calls, how can we get more of those offers out on a more regular basis?
And when you say message, because there's a version of a message where you're speaking to an avatar or you're speaking to one particular person, but then there's also, when you say message, it's just the content that you put out. You put out there in general. What's your take on when you say getting the right message? Like, what does that actually mean?
I think the right message is where your people actively engage and show up.
Yeah.
And generally they're the people that mean business. However, I do say that, and then a story comes to mind of just sharing valuable posts over the years. I've had 7 and 8 figure people just slide into the DMs simply because they've been watching and they know the game. So they're the sharks that are out there and they understand who's doing what.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the people that are going, this made so much sense, or like, wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Those people are worth leaning into and like loving on them because they've stopped, they've read, they've watched, take an opportunity, especially if it's talking specifically to the problem or the solution around the thing, not necessarily a story about your life that's just about that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's that balance you were saying before anyway of, the sort of content that you put out there, right?
Yeah, yeah. Mixture of both. Yep.
Yeah.
Personal, business,
which is cool, which is really cool. Where do you see your business sort of in the next, I know, there's a lot of plans to mastermind and go into like some really cool places, right? What's it going to look like for your business, sort of in the next 12 months? Where do you think the direction is going to be?
It's a good question. I think there's a lot happening we've been talking about AI a lot recently. Yes. I'm very interested to see where it goes from a production standpoint. Because content is top of funnel, and maybe I'm not answering this question right, but my mind is just there at the moment. Content's top of funnel, and so it's like those who learn to use these tools to produce absurd amounts of the right content with the right message will take the rest.
Yeah.
For us, how does that look? It looks like a lot of video content.
Yes.
And it looks like building that. The personal brand can't be ignored.
Yes.
And I still think video is underpriced attention that most people have fears and anxieties about. So if you can learn to master those things,
100%.
it changes everything. So we're going to start pushing heavily into video. And then lots of in person as well. Yeah,
nice.
I think one of the biggest compliments you can ever receive, and this is something from the band days for us, was like someone would meet me in real life and go, "Oh, you're just like you were online."
Yeah.
Like they feel that synergy, and so that's what you want to have. And so through video, through your marketing content, should be the same thing when someone meets you in person. So we want to do a lot more in person, a lot more stuff around the world. We've got clients sort of everywhere that we haven't been able to meet just yet. We're excited for that.
That's really cool. And just sort of going off the back of that, as you develop your business, and I know this from, again, talking to a lot of people, not just coaches, but, remote salespeople, where they're kind of left to fend for themselves in terms of financially. You make the money, 10K sounds good. You got to pay taxes. You got to do all those things, right? Well, you got to structure it to best suit. You've done a lot of work off the business in terms of, the things that you purchase, investments that you do. What about that side of things? How much thought or how much time do you spend thinking about what happens when you make the money?
Right. Yeah. It's not about just making it. It's about keeping it.
Yeah.
First thoughts, a lot of failures, that's for sure. A lot of money that went somewhere that didn't bring a return. So it's definitely a game of like learning, and building probably a decision-making matrix as to how you invest money.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'm not fully there just yet. But hearing the likes of Warren Buffett's, et cetera, of how they think around those things just blows my mind.
Yeah.
My parents believed in property, and that's where I guess I took up the mantle that, property is definitely somewhere worth investing. A friend of mine, George, he says that, people don't say the term, as safe as crypto. It's as safe as houses. Everyone needs a place to live. So I believe that that's a firm foundation for investment. And I also think it's a long-term play as well.
Yes.
So it's about changing the mindset from like a immediate dopamine rush of online that we get to going like, you've got to really learn to draw that out long term. We've been in the car industry for as long as I can remember. And so I'm passionate about cars. So I do like cars. Don't have to be brand new. I had a 20-year-old Lexus GS300.
What was your first, because you've been in cars, what was your dream car when you thought, okay, I've got my license? I'll tell you what mine was. So I had a red Toyota Corolla sedan, and I'd always read Fast Fours. This is how old I am now. Fast Fours it was called at the time. And so I had I can't remember what the year was, but it was a red Corolla, and it was a stock thing. And what I did was, because I'd read all these magazines about these Jap engines, I found somebody to swap the engine out for a supercharged 20-valve motor. No. And it was, at the time, was fast. Well, you can get standard cars now that are a lot faster than what that was, but at the time it was super fast, and that was always my dream.
And supercharged.
And it was supercharged.
And you got it.
And so I bought the car basically for the shell, and then I spent about $5,000 to rip the motor out and put a new one in.
No way.
And it was cool. Like it was a cool thing to happen. But you've been in cars for a long time, so back to what...
The first car that I remember going, that's what I want, was a Subaru WRX.
Ah, yeah.
And it was that classic shape, early 2000s. Yeah, that was...
Big wing.
I never got... Yeah, the big wing. Yeah, the Rally Art one. I never got one. So that passed. And from there on, I didn't have too much until Elon Musk came onto the scene and Tesla came about.
Yeah.
And I was just fascinated by the technology and how, because I'd been around cars so long, when you sit in a Tesla, it's reimagined. It's completely reimagined. It's nothing like a car should be that anybody's used to.
Yeah.
And I just think that's an interesting way of creating something. And so, it was on my dream board for a long time. And I've shared the story, I think, with you that I wanted to be in a space, this is probably just out of ego, that I would have enough cash in the bank to buy a Tesla in full. Yeah. Until I realized that's the dumbest use of cash anybody could ever do. Because I bought all my cars in cash, but 5, 10, 15, kind of cash. That's all right. It's okay. But when you're talking 50K, 60, 70K, So came to the realization that I don't need to pay for this in cash. That's dumb. Yeah. So, get a loan out on the car and let the business pay for it as part of our company expenses. Yeah. And we get to drive the car that we love.
A lot sooner. Yeah. And I guess that's, part of the point. What I was saying is, like, what do you do with the money after, right? Because you do have to, if you're thinking long term, you can't just keep acquiring clients, spending the money. At some point in time, it has to go somewhere. Yeah. You have to invest it. You have to.
And property is the same. And so with investment property, offsetting the tax that you pay in your business is a perfect way to do that too, until you get that tax to zero. Yeah. That's what
for sure
a lot of people do that we're not taught in school.
Which
I'm like, why weren't we taught any of this in school? We probably weren't ready for it then or interested, but definitely handy to know now.
Yeah, for sure. Because again, a lot of coaches that are doing, reasonably well, I also know that don't have a lot of money left over because of how
cash in, cash out,
and how they spend it. And why I bring that up is because then it hinders their decision making moving forward on their business.
Right.
If they're always at that, at that sort of thought process or that sort of cash flow situation, it's not a nice thing
Definitely.
to have. So with that, I've been hearing a lot on getting clients on a more recurring basis. Mm-hmm. So getting a really good monthly recurring revenue. What's your take on that? On, in the coaching space, what's the best way to do it? What's the type of offers that you can do to have that? And I know some programs or some niches, like monthly recurring is just the only way to go.
Totally.
But for others, it's very much a one-time, transaction. What do you think?
Yeah, it changed our world a number of years ago when I was sick to death of like going to bed on January 31st and waking up February having to start all over again and get clients in the door so that we made sure there was cash flow to pay for the things, to afford the people, to do more. Yeah. And so I just was like, there's got to be a better way than this, and had to find out, what's everybody else doing? This idea of monthly recurring revenue was brought to my attention. And so I think at the time we were just selling a 3-month thing. Yeah. And by the end of that, people would say, well, is there anything else? Or no? Okay, well, we would just keep them in our community and we would sell this lifetime access to the thing that we'd created because that's what everyone else was doing. But lifetime access, I realized, was, again, one of the stupidest pieces of an offer that you can add in there. Yes. Because what does that really mean? Does that mean after you die, your content portal will still be available for their kids and their kids' kids, and like they should have access to that because they're paid for lifetime access? It just gets ridiculous. It gets ridiculous,
that's
right?
True. That's true.
And I bet everyone listening to this that has some form of content portal or program, they're looking to improve that thing. So then what do you do with the stuff that you add on to your program or uplift it with? Do people pay more for that, or do they just get it because they're paid for the old thing?
They're already paid for it, yeah.
It gets really grey.
Yeah.
And so having a continuity program of sorts after a finished date where they pay monthly or they pay 3-month or 6-month or 12-month installment is the best way to increase your monthly recurring revenue so that you don't wake up on Monday with no cash at bank. And that they can also receive more value for you because you're continually looking to add more value and improve the service or the product.
Yeah, for sure.
So if it's a 90-day program, what does it look like monthly to continue on after? If they haven't soaked up all the goodness, if they haven't asked all that they could have, if they haven't reached the result or the transformation that they wish they had of in that time, that's how you go about.
I think that's a good starting point because exactly what you said. It's always a constant, cycle of acquiring clients.
Yes.
Where their most profitable people to sell to are already the existing.
That's right.
Clients that's already there. But it is sometimes hard to think of, okay, what does that mean does that mean if you go and put together some monthly recurring program, how much more delivery do you need to do? Does that mean that's more work?
It's so interesting. Just yesterday, Kaylee and I were looking back in 2020 through some people part of our pipeline and just seeing what was up back then. And our offer only had one group coaching call every 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
one call every 2 weeks. And now it's 3 calls per week.
Yeah.
And I was having this conversation with Taki yesterday as well about this idea that more is better. That's this idea that's out there, more. And then all the coaching space starts going, well, now you get 3 calls a day. So you're covered. Yeah. Now this call's at midnight in case you're worried about the next day.
Time zones and everything.
And when has adding more to a full schedule ever been a good idea?
Yeah.
It's never. But it comes back to this idea of focus. And if we used our time better, or if we helped our clients use their time better, they would get more fulfilling work, more productivity done in the time space. So I don't have an answer to this. We didn't get an answer on the phone yesterday. between us, but I think there's some unlearning that needs to happen.
Yeah.
That if you prioritize your time better and use it, because I know people that sit on calls and don't do the thing that they could do on the call.
Yes. Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, they think I'll do it later, but now they're wasting double amounts of time. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know how to sell that either. That, hey, there's actually way less here than more.
I think that's a good point though, because I think that's, you know, at some point in time, like people who just keep adding more and more, they'll always attract a certain type of client until the people who have had that more is like, well, that's too much. I don't actually need it. I need to use what I've got to implement already, you know.
And it's a fact that most people that open up a content portal don't go through everything in the content portal anyway.
What's the percentage, do you reckon? I'd love to know.
I just know with working over hundreds of clients over the years, a recurring theme of like, oh, I didn't get through, you know, all of this, or that I wanted, or that I could have used, or my team could have used. So I don't know the percentage, but I know from a free course perspective as a lead magnet, it's like less than 20% of people that will actually even go through the thing that they signed up for. Maybe that's because it's free.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Probably.
Yeah. It's just that commitment into it, isn't it? That's a bit different. Well, man, if you could leave a piece of advice, given, you know, like there's a range of people, you know, probably watching this who are coaches, either starting or getting to those next levels, or they're people who want to get into remote work, like what we do, which is a great place to be. From a mindset perspective, you know, not tactically or strategically, but they've got the tactics, they've got the strategies, they can do all of that stuff. They can find all of those things. From a mindset perspective, what separates the people who move forward and grow, you know, and make good impactful businesses versus those that don't?
I think it's curiosity. They ask the best questions and they're not afraid to ask them at any time. And that's what I've noticed among the best players.
Yeah, right. Just tell me a little bit more about that last bit.
Yeah, so I notice among the biggest players in the industry, they're not afraid to ask and they're not worried about what other people think about asking that question.
Yeah.
There's no stupid questions.
Yes.
And they ask often and just frequently.
Just whenever, yeah. I think that is a massive thing. I know I don't do that. I kind of time when I think, okay, I want to ask this question, but I'll wait. Oh, that's a good question. Let me listen to that first, and then your question all of a sudden is gone.
Totally. Yeah. Just get in there and ask.
That is a really good point.
And get curious around the people that you're serving as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, get super curious.
That's awesome. I hope you enjoyed that episode just as much as I did. And again, I want to thank Ryan for allowing us to use this space so that we could do this episode in person. And if you want to follow along Ryan's journey, then there's going to be links to social channels just below this video. And if you liked it, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.